As the years go by, sometimes we're treated to stories of treasures buried in parks and public spaces. This story is no different. What started as a book of paintings and riddles turned into a treasure hunt for a golden statue that remains hidden to this day. So let's go on the trail of the Golden Owl. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about true crime, unsolved mysteries, and the supernatural. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Ooh, this is gonna be a good one.
We got some more treasure under the belt. Well, I mean, we gotta find it, but...
I love the one we did a long time ago. I forgot the name. I'm sure you guys know the name of it.
There's The Secret.
Yeah, the book's in the park, and one of the parks was in San Francisco.
Yeah, there's two. There's The Secret with all the keys, right, Christian?
Yeah, The Secret was the one Alfredo's talking about.
Okay. And then what was the other one with the author that buried, very similar to this, but buried like a chest filled with jewels and things?
Oh, which one was that? Give me a minute. I'll find it.
Please. It's so funny, Fredo. While you were checking on the little loaf before we recorded, I was just reminiscing with Christian about how bad my memory's gotten. There are things that we've recovered on this show that I can't for the life of me conjure up. And I'm like, is this aging?
There's just so many memories like in our mind. And isn't it the whole thing is that like your memory is just a memory on top of a memory?
Oh God, it's the remembering of the remembering?
Exactly. Like
yuck.
Yeah. Which is, so what you're remembering right now is you remembering something that you've previously remembered. So you just keep copying over it.
What if I'm remembering this conversation right now? And I'm actually far in the future looking back over my life. Oh.
See, this is where it starts to get into like a Christopher Nolan film where I need someone to break it down for me because there's so many layers deep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're actually recording this podcast backwards.
That movie still breaks my brain.
Oh my God. Inception was, no, not Inception.
Tenet.
I'm blanking out. Tenet, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're all blanking out. Our memories are melted.
We're a mess today.
Listen, I think what happens is I put up a psychological barrier when I enter the confines of this podcast because there's so many things that just rattle my brain. Like the whole premise of this mystery podcast is for me to find the unknown. I want answers, you know? I want to know that there's creatures out there lurking in the dark. But maybe I prevent it from sticking, you know, just to save myself.
Rewrite it. Yeah, for sure.
So I double checked. We did Forest Fenn's treasure as well, which was another buried treasure thing where somebody claimed to have found it. And then we did the Beale ciphers, which was a series of like cipher texts that were supposed to lead to some buried gold, I think. Yes. And then there was the treasure on Oak Island, which we also covered. So we've actually done a number of treasure topics.
Yeah. Treasure's always good. It's a nice, lighthearted mystery.
Exactly.
But before we dive into this one, I want to give, as always, a huge shout out to the task force supporting us directly over at patreon.com/redweb. It is the number one way to support us, right next to store.redwebpod.com to get that nice merch. But let's give a shout out to task force members Ali Riopel and KDCD19. And then, of course, we have our monthly squonk shout outs. We have a new squonker this month. Their name is Lo K. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a Squonk tier member.
Hey.
Yeah. We also have Azrael and Tucker Did It, which I believe is a nice, fresh, old school reference to Red versus Blue. But yeah, we'll talk more about what you get with Patreon at the end of the podcast, so stick around for that. But yeah, let's dive into the mystery at hand, the Golden Owl. It was 3:30 a.m. or so, very early hours, of April 24th, 1993. A man by the name of Régis Hausseur buried a bronze owl sculpture somewhere in France. Its location, of course, is still unknown, and the only way to find it is to answer the riddles and follow the clues within the book called On the Trail of the Golden Owl. Now, this book was originally published in 1993 under the French title Sur la trace de la chouette d'or.
Okay.
Under the pseudonym Max Valentine.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a name.
So that's just the French version of the same title. On the Trail chouette. I've never heard, but that's now I know how to say owl in French.
And then you win the wheat. And then we
Chouette the door. Sorry, everybody.
Very sorry.
Fredo and I once walked the streets of Montreal with a good friend of ours, Jeremy, many years ago, and let's just be honest, we are not capable in French, and so what came out a lot was, oui.
A lot of that.
Which then turned into or devolved into, oui.
A lot of oui, as we just traveled around.
Yeah, beautiful city. Got to work on the streets, though. Those winters are eating up those streets. Now, this book contains 11 paintings by a man named Michel Becker, alongside 11 conjoined riddles. With all of this said, the bronze owl is said to only be a replica of the true prize, which is an owl sculpture made entirely of gold and silver, said to be adorned with 500 diamonds in the head. I have images for you. There's the first 3 images we've provided in the message channel, but Task Force, of course, as always, you can find us on social media to see these images.
Oh, damn, we got all the angles on this owl.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. It's really pretty.
The angles say this exists.
It's in motion. It's not like an owl just stationary. The wings are flapped. It's, it's got his head turned. It's like in motion. Looking at picture number 2. This is a beautiful owl. And you tell me this is worth some money?
It must be worth some money, because the back there, as you can see, is all gold.
Yeah.
The underbelly, underside of the wings is all silver. And then the face, this is a barn owl, I think, but the face is all gold encrusted with diamonds.
Oh my God. Where will we find this?
I mean, at the end of this treasure trail, man, let's get our boots on and go outside.
Woo, Red Web by to make a name for ourselves.
Oh, God. All right, Gambit. Well, let's talk about the size of this owl. And I'm not going to disappoint you. I'm not going to say that this is actually half an inch tall. This is actually a pretty good size. The golden owl measures 10 inches tall and 20 inches wide if you measure, I believe, wingtip to wingtip, with a robust weight of about 33 pounds. If you prefer, that's 25 centimeters by 50 centimeters by 15 kilograms. Now, interestingly, Becker, the guy who made all the paintings, is also the one who created this golden owl as well as the bronze replica. And I did some digging. We found different sources trying to figure out the value of this particular owl. If it were gold alone, that's where my estimate's coming from. If it were gold alone, it would be worth around $1.2 million to this day.
Just gold alone? Well, I guess like if all of it was gold, like pure gold, and it wasn't like any silver on it?
Yeah, solid.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so some of that 33 pounds is going to be silver, but also you got some diamonds in play. We don't know what kind of grade they are. There's all sorts of quality there. But Valentine claimed that at the time it was worth about 1 million francs. So I did a lot of math. I did a lot of researching on converting francs in July of 1993 to dollars in US currency. And so that gave us $178,000 USD. And so then I converted that with inflation to today's currency, and it would be around $387,000. All that is to say is we got an expensive owl on our hands, and the gold market has certainly outpaced inflation.
Yeah, it is.
So either way, we have an amazing piece of treasure here, and a very, very engaging puzzle too. So on May 15th, 1993, after the publication of the book, the treasure hunt for the owl was officially launched. Despite the original intent for this treasure hunt to only last a few months, the treasure, as you can tell, we're doing an episode on it, remains hidden to this day. In fact, when discussing his design of the treasure hunt in 1996, Valentine claimed, quote, "If all the searchers put all their knowledge together, the owl would be found in 2 hours," which is phenomenal.
What? 2 hours? Someone will find a good chunk of treasure, and you're telling me that no one still found this thing?
No, that's so frustrating. I mean, like, this is 3 years after he's launched it, and he's like, guys, just put your heads together. It's not that hard. Now it's been another 28 years, and I'm like...
Someone would have had to have found this by now, or actually, more than likely, maybe just destroyed it because they just dug up land, or, you know what I mean, put a damn hotel or apartment complex over it, and it's just under tons and tons of concrete.
Interesting. I want you to hold on to that thought.
Okay.
Christian, guy in the chair, this man's got psychic abilities. We need to admit him to some sort of research facility. So my goal is to have the unknown proven to me. I think your goal is to slowly wake up your X gene, right? We've talked about that for years.
Give me my helmet. Give me Cerebro.
I'm telling you, it's awakening. Anyway, no, I definitely want to come back to that because you might be onto something. Now, as you can imagine, the intent was for hunters to decipher all 11 riddles, which would then lead them to a town somewhere in France where the owl could be discovered. To be very specific, the bronze replica is buried somewhere. And to my understanding, talking with Jillian as we did some research, the procuration of the bronze owl would then beget you the golden owl as the prize. So the golden owl is not in the wind, instead it is the bronze owl. And it could also have to do with maybe tarnishing or just weathering. I'm not exactly sure, but that is my understanding of that. Of course, the question remains though, the main question is where in this town would it be buried? Because if all 11 riddles lead you to the town, any given town, even a small one, is still a lot of area to cover for a small owl. And it's due to this question that many early treasure hunters theorized that there must be a secretive 12th riddle. Now, this 12th clue, now referred to as the super solution, has since been confirmed by Valentine himself. Actually, in 1994, just a year after the hunt began, this so-called super solution would use, as he calls, remnants left over from the previous 11 riddles, which would then help seekers find the very specific area the owl was buried in. So in other words, 11 riddles, a majority of each riddle would solve the next clue. And then there would be pieces unused in each riddle that they themselves would be pulled together to make the 12th. And so you need to know what is used in the original solution and what is being kept for the 12th riddle. So I feel like that's a layer of difficulty that Valentine is kind of glossing over.
Huh? What? He said 2 hours? Huh?
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, I'm not even going to piece this together to have a path to start on in 2 hours.
Right. I might struggle reading the first riddle in 2 hours.
So is he just some kind of super genius? And he's like, oh, it'll take anyone 2 hours if they have the IQ of a maxed out stat for a human being.
Right. If you plug this into a supercomputer, it should be perfectly doable.
Yeah, like,
It's a good question.
I mean, I guess he's kind of banking on the internet putting their minds together, and that's a lot of, it's a lot of people.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, this is the early iteration. I mean, the early 90s. You have access to the intranet and precursors to what becomes the World Wide Web. And so, yeah, he is seeing the world as a connected place and that it should be easy for people to share their solutions. But I also see, it's easy to set up riddles and clues and things, and maybe you obscure your path too much. So for you see the path you've laid, but for others seeing the clues for the very first time, I'm sure it's easy to lose sight of that and not be able to measure your own difficulty accurately.
Yeah. And also, is that when you have to have minutes in order to get on the internet?
I don't know. You definitely needed to not be on your telephone.
Yeah. Everyone was just trying to solve this riddle with free trials from AOL. And then,
Mom, I need another AOL disc.
another disc. I gotta go to the grocery store. I need another 5 minutes.
Right. You go buy a Kellogg's Chex and then suddenly have a CD, right? Is that where most of them came from? I think mine came from a Kudos box.
Possibly. They came from all different areas.
All right, but let's talk now, though, about the riddles specifically. Like, whenever we've done a treasure hunt before, we try to break them down. And I'll be honest, we're not going to cover every single riddle in full detail because it gets a little heady. We're going to talk about two of the more important ones, the very first one, and one of the most... It's said to be one of the most important ones, but it hasn't been solved yet. So we don't know why it's important. And then we'll kind of assess the clues in between. But again, in total, there are 11 riddles and 11 paintings. Each of these 11 riddles consists of a combination of the painting, the title of the painting, as well as a cryptic poem. Additionally, each riddle has a corresponding color wavelength listed above it, something like 360 or 500, and that's kind of indicating what order each of these riddles needs to be done in. So it's not like riddle 1 is step 1. It turns out that riddle 2 has the lowest color wavelength, and so that lower number corresponds to it being first, if that makes sense.
It's already out of my league.
So that part was an easy part to solve, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, look.
But I wouldn't have thought about it.
I'm a visual person, so maybe I need it in front of me. But my God.
So I imagine, like, you open this book. I don't know what else could be in there other than the riddles, but you have one big painting. Above that painting is the name of it, and then a 3-digit code, just some number. People eventually figured out that it is corresponding to a color wavelength, and therefore, maybe this is the order we should go in. And then next to that painting, you'll have a poem, which, let's see, this one is, I believe, 8 lines, the one we're about to cover. And within that, it kind of gives you a hint towards where to go. That's as best as I could describe it because so much of it's still unsolved and there's a lot of like questions. But what was really, really cool about this particular one, and one of my favorite parts, is that it did become an internet mystery because of its timeline. Because, you know, soon after the publication of the book, Valentine actually created what's called a Minitel server, and he named that Max Val after his name. And this was to connect with the community, give clues, give guidelines to players, allow them to ask questions. Now, the Minitel was the first online service accessed through phone lines and was the most popular of its kind before the internet then came to pass. It's very similar to Usenet, which we've talked about in other early internet mysteries. Just a way to chat with one another, like a message board.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So I guess you have like an address, you plug that in. Sometimes you have to pay to access. Other times it might be open. Or maybe have a password, and then once you're in, you just talk to other users on a very niche subject. Now, over an 8-year time frame, he reportedly responded to over 100,000 questions on that Minitel server. So he was very active in trying to help people figure this out.
Wow, so he was really all about people finding this.
Yeah. Now, it's actually on this Minitel server that he confirmed the existence of that so-called super solution, stating that users needed to use maps, and that there is a secret 12th riddle made up of pieces of each of the 11 riddles. So I'll try to help you with a specific remnant, because let's just look at what Valentine himself considers to be one of the, quote, simplest riddles.
Okay.
This is the clue that the treasure hunters believe gives the starting location for the hunt. And there is an image that goes alongside this, if you want to go ahead and unspoiler tag that for you now so you can see it as I read it. So you have a painting. The title is called Opening. And then the poem that goes with this riddle says, "My first half of the first age precedes my second and third seeking their way. My fourth is inspired, my fifth is in rage, but without protest follows my fourth and the Roman Alpha. My sixth is hidden at the limits of eternity, my seventh standing spits his venom. To find my all, just be wise, because the truth in truth will not be an oracle's affair." That is the end of the poem.
Ooh, so we got like a really cool artistic rooster
Got a rooster here.
doing a little whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kicked up grass, like thick blades of grass. They look really thick.
Yeah, maybe like straw or hay or something.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin. I'd start counting those blades. Oh, there's kind of like a silhouette behind his head.
Keep going with that. What else can you see with that?
It looks like some kind of tower, possibly,
Okay.
behind it.
There is definitely something about the silhouette around its head.
What the hell?
Yeah. So let me break down this riddle. The first sentence, which is my first half of the first age, apparently corresponds with baby, right? Because your first age being 1 year old, and then it says basically your first half of that is essentially definitely narrowing in on your adolescence as a child. And then it says the first of that. So if you take the word baby and you take the first letter of that, you get B. The answer for the second sentence is the French word où, which is French for where, which corresponds to the part where it says seeking their way. And so now from that you have B-O-U. And again, I'm kind of reading you the solution as opposed to theorizing of all the different angles that this could be. The next letters come in the next line where it says R comes from a solution from air. That's where I'm a little lost, where they get air from in particular. But then G comes in a lot more easily because it says my fifth is in rage. So my fifth letter of this clue, this solution, is in the word rage, R-A-G-E. And so people pulled out G. And I think they're able to pull out the R. Sorry, this is getting very weird. Because the next line essentially refers to the fourth letter and gives a little bit more clue talking about the Roman alpha. Suffice to say, it's R, okay? It's I'll be honest, even with the solution in front of me, this gets a little squirrely.
I mean, look, if you're giving it out to the masses, then sure,
Yeah.
possibly, yeah, okay, a couple hours. But I feel like there's an IQ check.
Uh-huh.
In video games, there's like a skill check where it's like, okay, are you high enough geared to be able to fight this boss? I feel like there's an IQ check here, and I don't qualify.
Yeah, no, the door of the IQ test was slammed in my face. And I said, okay, I'll just read the answer later.
Yeah, I'll just look from afar. It's fascinating as hell, though.
Yeah. So here's a clue that makes a lot more sense and is probably the easiest one of this riddle. The sixth letter is E. And that's because it says in the poem, the sixth is hidden at the limits of eternity. But this poem initially is in French, and the French word for eternity is éternité, which begins and ends with an E, and therefore the limits of eternity is E. And then the last letter comes from the standing, spitting his venom. We assume that would be a snake, so we get an S. All that put together, combining those letters, you get Bourges, which starts off our hunt in the French city of Bourges, right in the middle of the country. Now, what's interesting is I have another image for you I want you to go ahead and take a look at. This now refers to the silhouette around the rooster's head. This visual clue essentially confirms that Bourges is the answer.
Oh my God, that is
see
a
it?
silhouette. Yep.
So the silhouette around the rooster's head is the shape of France.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah, and the eye for the rooster lands right where Bourges would be. So if this is one of the simplest ones, and I'll be honest, I'm struggling just to explain the answer. That gives you a taste for where this whole treasure hunt goes. But I love to see it in retrospect, how it was put together and how the painting can correspond to the poem. Because that's what I was kind of trying to understand as we were doing the research. Like, okay, the painting is part of the poem, is part of the title and all of that, but how does it connect? And this is a great example of how that works.
Man, this is sick. I mean, again, from afar, I would love to just see this breakdown,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I assume the people that are solving this or the people that are watching while this is being solved, it's like, experiencing national treasure
Oh, yeah.
in real life, which is pretty awesome all in itself to just kind of sit there and experience all of it.
And it also makes you feel smart when you understand how the answers came to pass.
Oh, definitely.
But definitely humbles you when you go, I'm not smart enough to figure out how they got to it, though. Or if you're trying to solve it alone, there's no way to test your solution, really. I mean, I guess that's what the painting is kind of for.
Right.
But imagine you're going through and going, okay, what precedes my second and third seeking their way? And you come up with a totally different word that also is a French city. I mean, I don't know. Like this type of treasure hunt almost necessitates an online community to put their heads together.
Yeah, this is not easy.
Yeah, no way 2 hours is going to work. So, as you can imagine now, some of the riddles involve similarly basic puzzles like this, while others are much more complex. Though most of them are pointing to different French towns, it's confusing as to what the purpose behind those towns might be. It's still unknown. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the theories, but my gut is to say, all right, well, if the first step of this treasure hunt is Bourges, then what does that do for the second clue? Because imagine, I think 5 cities are the answer to these clues. And I'm like, well, why not just jump to the 7th and then it's going to be in that city? Like, what do these other cities have to do with it? And that's still an ongoing thing. Is that, do you have to trace a shape between all of these cities and it gives you something? That's an unknown question.
Still to this day?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because right now there are, 11 riddles. And again, 5 of the solved ones seem to point to towns or cities. And so, again, I'm like, well, is it history that they're activating? Is it a story of, I don't know, how France was created, but maybe the expansion of France? Does it have anything to do with that? Why go to these cities in this order instead of just jumping to the last one, right?
Right.
But either way, coming back to the riddles at large, more of the complex riddles require knowledge of things like decryption, astronomy, time signatures, and history. So it does seem that Valentine is well educated, whatever his background might be.
I would say so. Because this is wild. It's so cool though, but definitely like a different degree of treasure hunting. It's like on a global scale.
Mm-hmm. Now, frustratingly, we've talked about these so-called remnants. I want to give you an example. So when we come up with the word bourge from the poem before, that almost leaves you with the last two sentences completely unused. In my mind, that is an example of what would be called a remnant. And so maybe the final two lines of this poem are used in the so-called 12th riddle, or that super solution. But also, what makes things even more difficult to solve is that there are apparently red herrings hidden throughout these riddles.
Oh no! Don't hit us with that.
Just a bunch of logical landmines. So Valentine stated that the super solution is made up of some of these red herrings, which means that you have to know enough to solve the riddle. Then you have to know which lines aren't used so they can be used in the 12th riddle, but then some of those aren't used because they're just red herrings.
Oh, I'm not, yeah.
So obviously over the many years, this left many treasure hunters, or so-called owlers, stuck and not knowing which way to go, what was relevant, etc.
Rightfully so. I mean, you got red herrings too, because then you could be banging your head down the wrong path for years.
Absolutely. And to me, this is why it's so difficult for people stepping into this mystery while Valentine's going, well, if you all just put your heads together, it's done. I'm like, well, you know what's a red herring. These treasure seekers do not know what's a misdirect.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Why have a misdirect?
You gotta work for it.
You gotta work for that owl. He's sitting there like an evil villain in his plush couch. The fire is roaring, no lights are on, and he's got the golden statue in his lap, and he's just stroking it gently, speaking to it.
They'll never find you, my precious. I've left too many red herrings.
And then we never have so far.
Yeah. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. That's a big one. When your schedule is packed, it's easy to let your priorities slip. But when you feel like you have no time just for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. I greatly appreciate therapy as a tool, and even more so BetterHelp as a good starting point. It's a difficult thing for a lot of people to approach. It's daunting. Where do you start? How do you start? How do you find the right person? And that's why I like BetterHelp's service, because they have a survey that you answer so they can get to know you and find somebody that specializes in that. And they can also help you find the right person very, very easily. It's convenient. It's a great starting point on your therapy journey and helps remove some of those hurdles that a lot of us feel, myself included, when starting this journey. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is, like I said, fill out that brief questionnaire and you're going to get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, which is a huge part of therapy, finding the right person for your needs. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/redweb today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/redweb. Now, due to the varying degrees of difficulty, there are multiple riddles that are still unsolved, of course. In particular, the riddle that Valentine himself considered the second most important is clue number 3, or riddle number 3, and it's also called the 780 Enigma. That's because the wavelength number at the top says 780. So, I have image 3 here for you. If you want to go ahead and take a look at this new art piece while I read this shorter poem. So this art piece is called First Step. It says, wherever you want, by the Ross and the coachman, but wherever you have to, by the compass and the foot. And that is that. What do you see in the painting?
See an upside down compass that's in the foreground. Then kind of like Oregon Trail type travelers. One on the horse, on the left side, one on the horse, like a caravan. And then the right side, I mean, they're in a desert, blue sky. And there's a guy on the right, looks like a cowboy essentially. Red bandana around the neck, can't really see it, faces. Then kind of like I guess just a white light over the horizon. It also just seems like it's the vision is scary. Like it's the lens that makes everything all round. I forgot what it's called.
A fisheye?
Fisheye lens. There we go. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah. It's got a distortion to it. That white blur is either like a cloud or the sun maybe on the horizon.
Yeah. That compass is upside down though.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I can make sense of the poem. It's basically saying wherever you want to go, you have to take a horse. But wherever you have to go, probably for this treasure, you'll need to go on foot. You can't take a car, you can't take a coach, you can't take a horse. And wherever you really want to go to get this treasure, you're going to need to use a compass. And so maybe the signals are bad, I don't know. But that doesn't answer it for me, right? There's no like definitive answer, but that at least I can pull out of that. And then the painting just kind of illustrates you have a man on foot, you have a man on a horse. Maybe the visual of this location has something to do with the location of the owl or the location of the city. I don't know. Like that more deserty look.
Yeah. Man, because then you just go digging around the desert.
Yeah, it's going to be like holes out here. We're going to just start putting 5-foot holes all over France
Everywhere.
for generations. Grandpa, I don't want to do this anymore.
Trying to make money out
That's too
here.
damn bad.
Grandpa trying to make some bucks.
Yeah. Well, 16, I'm sure, frustrating years for Valentine had gone by after launching his treasure hunt. And the man known as Max Valentine, again his real name, Régis Hauser, passed away in 2009, leaving the location of the treasure written down, sealed in an envelope, and handed to lawyers. And then another 12 or so years went by without this really changing. People still sought it, but no one really knew if the solution was known by anybody. The location was then passed via floppy disk, very advanced technology, to the artist Becker, the man who made the statue, the man who made the paintings. He receives this floppy disk in 2021. Now he is the official new organizer of this treasure hunt. So he got this floppy disk and decoded it. He was able to then figure out what the actual location was, because I guess he was given himself some sort of small puzzle to decrypt. But he then figured it out and he went to the location where this owl was supposedly buried. He went with a legal bailiff to make sure that everything was copacetic. And instead of finding a bronze owl, the one that he created and the one that Mr. Hauser had buried, Becker found, interestingly, a rusted owl made of a more ferrous material, something with iron that would rust, and it was in a plastic bag. So without knowing who found it, when, or why, Becker then said, okay, well, he replaced the rusted owl with another bronze one, buried it back in the same spot, and to this day, it's unknown what happened to the original bronze owl, but that brings me to your initial gut check, which is, did somebody just stumble into this? Was it part of construction? Was it part of kids playing? Or did somebody actually find this and then just never say anything?
Wait, so you're saying that they replaced it?
Yeah, so Becker made it, confirmed the location. When he dug it up, he was surprised to find a rusted iteration. He was like, well, I made this in bronze. This is he called it a ferrous metal or something with iron too, which has a lot of carbon, which can make it rust. But he's like, this is like an owl that somebody like Indiana Jones, the original, out and then reburied a fake one.
That's so weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I don't know, maybe the author himself said, fine, if nobody's going to get it, I'm just going to replace it with a crappy version, melt down this bronze because the bronze market's doing good, set his family up.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, so are you saying, did he just keep it? Like, someone replacing it with a replica is a mystery on itself.
Yeah. We don't know what happened to the original bronze, but he did replace it. Since he was the one who made it in the first place, he went back home after almost 30 years, made a new bronze iteration of the owl, and stuck it back in the solution spot.
Okay.
I'm surprised no one ghosted this man and just kind of followed him around or shadowed him to see if he's like, oh, he's leaving his house. Let's see if he goes to the owl,
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised someone did.
Yeah, just dig right up behind him. But
yeah. That's a cheat code right there.
Yeah. Now, of course, as you can imagine, there are dedicated groups still trying to find the golden owl, including the Mysterious Writings forums. There's a player who made a wiki called Wiki Chouette d'Erin, which basically is Wiki Owl of Erin, whoever Erin might be, maybe the person who made it. But There's also the Association of Research of the Golden Owl, who have their own forums and Discord channels in order to continue this conversation. And I'm sure all of them might be listening to this, pulling their hair out, going, some of this is a lot more easy than you think. But there's like so much nuance to some of the solves, so many lingering questions and theories. This is one of those mysteries that I would love to go as deep as I could possibly go, but it would become a 5-part series of exploring question and answer and theories. It's just like, this is such a deep rabbit hole, this one.
Oh, I bet. I mean, if you're talking about like, decades of information, decades of like people researching stuff, how do you just, distill that into, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
Absolutely. I think it's really cool. It's, I'm sure, very frustrating to the author, but also many people who have been here since the early days. Like, why hasn't it been found? He's saying it's simple. I'm sure that part is frustrating, but it's probably also equally exciting when more progress is made, when a new clue is solved or a new theory enters the fray. Watching these online mysteries is always exhilarating, just even as an audience, just to be passively part of it and watch people chatter about it. I mean, that's why we do this whole podcast, but it's always just very, very cool.
Yeah, I think like this is definitely like a spectator mystery for me. I mean, I spectate them all. We spectate them all, but this one is the one where I just would like to be the fly on the wall of like the top team that's trying to figure this out from the jump.
Absolutely. To be there from the beginning, the closest I've ever been is close to like Cicada 3301. I reference that one a lot because it's one of my favorites, but it's also one of the ones that pulled me into this arena in the first place. But yeah, to be a fly on the wall in the early days would be so exciting because the internet's so new.
Yeah.
It's a treasure hunt for this really cool golden owl. Like, what's not to love,
Yeah, it's pretty sick. The secondary mystery all in itself is just like the bronze version?
And it being found or replaced. Like, the fact that it was replaced means someone knew something, right? It was either the author or someone who found it but didn't say anything. But who would find it, knowing that this is such a community thing, and then not say something? I don't know. That's such a mind blow in itself, you're right. Now, in the end, Valentine confirmed 3 different hints that would help solve these riddles before his passing. We've talked about a few of them, but to recap, maps would be essential to the journey of the final town, and then a more detailed map would be essential once you're in that town to then find the specific spot. To me, that indicates that something needs to be drawn on a map, something that is told to you by these riddles that will help you find it, whether it be coordinates or some sort of geometric shape. Again, people have talked about drawing lines between cities to try to figure things out, but shapes and geometry are definitely part of this particular mystery. The other angle we've kind of covered, but that's the idea of remnants and the super solution. Both are confirmed by Valentine to be important for solving this entire thing, but more specifically on the remnants, he indicated that these would be used to solve a final riddle, which would point to the cache's specific spot in the final city. So 11 riddles to get you to the city. That mysterious 12th would be used to find the very specific spot.
God.
Oh, it's a lot, but it only gets more confusing. A lot of this information, I do want to give a huge shout out for a second. GoldenOwlHunt.com has done a lot of work to collate all of this information and make it available to mystery enthusiasts, treasure hunting enthusiasts like you and I, but also the wide web. So Task Force, if you want to get hands-on with this mystery, you can start there. There's a lot more information to dive into, but yeah, a lot of the reports come from them. And as they reported, super confusingly, Becker, the artist, the painter, the sculptor, the man who inherited the mantle of the organizer of this treasure hunt, has stated that the treasure hunters should, quote, ignore the idea of the remnants, but should instead focus on the text of the final 2 clues.
Oh.
So he's fully disagreeing with the man who made the treasure hunt, but he's like, I know the solution, and if you really want a clue that's going to help you, ignore his clue, just look at the final 2 clues. That's going to do way more than trying to think about remnants. And I think that that's just scrambling minds now after 30 years.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, is he just trying to nudge people in the right direction?
Probably.
Which I would think so, right? Because at this point, he's going, okay, the author is passed. No one's still found this thing. And let me just kind of, hey, guys, focus in this area.
Absolutely. I can totally see that. Because at a certain point, like, you don't want to make it easy. You want to make sure that people earn it, but also you don't want to like steal the enjoyment out of the actual solves. But because it's gone on so long, he's probably like, all right, let me do a little bit more here. And Becker has given many such hints since taking over in 2021, some more controversial and some more conflicting than others, varying community reactions to each. But in 2022, Becker actually published a 5th edition of the book, which updated the game rules. He's also given many more hints and tips to help folks dial in the hunt, confirming past solutions as well as clarifying existing hints from Valentine, which is super helpful. So he's basically galvanizing some of the steps the communities has made. So that way no one feels like, all right, well, let's unwind this in case we've been wrong this whole time. He goes, no, up until this point, you're good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, it's been so many years. Like, help us.
Like, you earned this. Let me just go ahead and say, you got a checkpoint. You know, you can respawn here.
Give us a checkpoint. Let us get that checkpoint confidence.
Absolutely. So interestingly, and this is, again, the favorite ingredients of mine of certain mysteries is when they hit the internet, because things go wild after that, and when they keep going and they keep being relevant, right? So in April of 2023, only a short year ago, Becker released his own poem/clue for the 30th anniversary of the treasure's burial called Pierrette, or kind of the French name for Pierre. But it's called Pierrette and the Pot aux Roses. And here is that poem. It says, "In a place everything begins, in a point everything ends. Going from one to the other, clasped between her hands, Pierrette's rose, Valentine's present, has sown its petals like little white pebbles. While hesitating, measured rhythmic, to the end of the road her steps had carried her, as in another world of which she could be the center. Diligent and zealous, Pierrette came to understand. By the chouette door, finally, she would be surprised." Yeah.
Beautifully written.
Very beautiful.
Like, okay.
What's interesting about this particular poem is the difference in structure that it takes. Obviously, it's a different person, so they're going to have a different voice, but it isn't even trying to resemble the structure of the clues given before.
Yeah.
It is Becker's own clue. And I think that that's so fascinating. And I don't want to speak out of turn, but to my understanding, I don't believe that there are confident solutions, like this is the solution to this particular poem. I think this is more of a open end right now, but a nudge in the right direction.
Ended.
Yeah. Now, before we dive into the kind of scattered theories that this mystery has, I want to give a final button to this mystery by going back to the beginning. And this kind of helps illustrate maybe Valentine's potential frustration because he was seeing that people weren't working together. So in 1995, this is somewhere around 2 years after the treasure was buried and the treasure hunt began, Valentine confirmed that 95% of the solution had been found and resolved collectively across all of the so-called owlers.
What?
Yeah,
That's
95%.
a huge number. Like, you're essentially at the finish line.
Exactly. That's what's almost like aggravating to me looking back on this. But he stressed so much on his forums that if people could just put their minds together, share their solutions, that they would have enough to probably finish it and solve it. That he noticed people weren't working together. So he's like, Group A has solved clue 3, but Group B has solved clue 4, and they don't know that each other have done that, or they don't trust one another. He then gives a quote that I don't know if it's supposed to motivate people or just frustrate the crap out of them, because he actually went to the site where this owl was buried, and he actually said something about it. He said this, quote, "During my visit to the site in August 95, I observed that the earth had been moved about 130 meters from the cache, but without being able to determine if it was a well-filled hole or trace left by an animal." End quote. So he's basically saying it's possible. He can't confirm or deny whether it was an animal, something in nature, or a person, but somebody had been digging 130 meters away from the actual cache, and he's telling the treasure hunters that, like, hey, maybe one of you was really close.
Oh my God. I love that he's at this point helping us, because thank God, otherwise
Yeah.
it would just go unsolved for, the rest of the time. But,
Yeah.
to be that close. Then again, though, if you are the person that is that close, that means you're following this closely.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I'd want to go back and then just go 130 meters in all the directions.
That's a great point, like 130 is pretty precise. You don't
Yeah.
eyeball 130 meters. So I'm wondering if somebody online was like, I was digging somewhere the other week. Maybe that was me. And then, they dug around and maybe they're the person that replaced the owl with the rusted one. Who knows?
True. But if anything, I wouldn't have said nothing. I just go back, start digging as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's the thing is like so many people want to work together to figure this out. But then, once you start figuring things out, once you're at the lead of the pack, you might want to go silent a little bit because now you're starting to look down the barrel of getting a $1 million golden diamond encrusted with silver owl, right?
Exactly. So that's where you start trying to break away from the pack.
I mean, unless you go in there with 100 people and you start laser cutting this owl into pieces, everyone gets a fair share. He's going, just work together. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if they will. But with that, it's been over 30 years since the start of the treasure hunt. Some believe that the golden owl will never be found, and others have theorized that it might not even exist. So we can talk about some of these residual theories. Now, it's possible that wherever this is located, it has been changed. Maybe it's been made inaccessible to your point by construction from people that just didn't know. A parking garage gets slapped up, owls deeply buried under concrete, nobody knows. However, in my mind, that would be a very recent development, given that Becker himself has recently visited within the last few years to the point where he then had to re-hide the owl. Now, coming back to the idea that it might not exist, there are some people, many people actually, that believe that perhaps this entire treasure hunt is a hoax of some kind, and that there is no golden owl. There might be a bronze owl. Maybe there was an iron owl as like the main thing. But now I'm just thinking, like, what if he did bury a bronze owl, kept the gold owl, and then eventually went and got the bronze back and then put some sort of non-precious metal in the ground? Oh gosh.
I mean, totally could have. It's a good chunk of money in that owl.
It's a very good chunk of money. So before I dive into the, this or that on the hoax, I always like to think about what's the motivation? Why bring hoax to the table? Because we talk about hoaxes all the time.
Right.
And yes, some people want to just have fun. ARGs are always a joy. And sometimes it's an ARG, period, right? Hoax motivation number 1. These are precious metals. And honestly, if no one's going to find it, you want to bring that money back. And so you put some sort of non-precious iron out there in the wild. To me, motivation number 2 is he sold a book and he himself made at least 3, if not 4 of the editions and was making a good amount of money, right? Doing that. Book sales is a common motivation that we've seen when we talk about hoaxes for, ghost hunts, alien witnessing, and all sorts of stuff. And you also can't undervalue the fact that a lot of people just kind of want attention, want their 10 minutes of fame.
Yeah, they do.
And I'm not putting this out here to say that this is what the guy was doing. Not at all. But I am trying to come up with what the motive could be for the hoax.
It's a creative way to get attention, though.
100%. So with that said, some people offer the wrinkle to the hoax theory. They say, Max Valentine actually created 9 different treasure hunts after the Golden Owl, and all of those have been found. And so if that's the case, then why wouldn't this one also be real?
I mean, if that's the case, then I'm inclined to believe this is real.
But that's when I started getting cynical, Fredo.
Uh-oh.
That's where I put a wrinkle on the wrinkle. We got some deep cuts happening here. There is no retinol in this moisturizer, okay? So I started taking a closer look. Thanks to a lot of data collators out there, you can actually go figure out what these 9 other treasure hunts are. They're all listed online. But I wanted to look closer at each of them, and I noticed that at least 7 of these 9 were commissioned by a company. And so again, I'm being cynical here, but many of these were media companies such as Paris Match. You have Junior Science and VA Magazine. You have PlayJam, Cryo Networks. In fact, the first one he did after the Golden Owl was 1996's Cryptic. And this was bought and paid for by Microsoft France to celebrate the launch of MSN. To really throw back the the topics here.
The launch of MSN.
Yeah. And so, to me, I don't think it fully debunks the hoax angle just because he did other ones. In fact, it could strengthen the hoax angle because cynically, he's got the motivation for selling a book and updating those editions and selling more copies. But then you also have companies coming in, offering him money to do another treasure hunt based on his viral success, which then could backwards give this original treasure hunt some sort of validity. Again, I don't personally subscribe to the idea of it being a hoax, but I'm thoroughly exploring that angle. You know what I mean?
I mean, I get it. Because who's to say this isn't the biggest one at that point? You know, it becomes a hoax because of the pressure or whatnot. But I'm inclined to believe with the previous ones being found and legit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be stronger if he was like, here's another out-of-pocket treasure hunt. You know, I hit a golden horse, and now if you follow these clues, and then people followed those clues and then found it and then, you know, won the horse or whatever.
Yeah.
If it wasn't something that was commissioned, I would definitely be like, oh, for sure, this man is definitely laying treasure hunts.
Yeah, that's true, though. Those were commissioned.
Again, I'm not personally subscribed to the idea of a hoax, but I don't think it's been fully debunked. So it's kind of just an idea that's on the table.
Yeah.
But with that kind of theory out of the way, there's a few other theories and near answers that we have. Many of the Golden Owl communities believe that the village of Dabo is I hope I'm saying that correctly, is the location of the treasure. They believe that the final destination has been found, but again, it's still theory. We don't know for sure, and we certainly don't know where in this city or this town it would be. So Dabo is a small town in northeastern France. It's very near Strasbourg, but clue 7, aka the 500 enigma, actually says, quote, to find the spiral with 4 centers, end quote. And so with this and other clues in mind, to some, it appears to lead to Dabo, which has a church sitting atop a rock with a spiral path. I have images of both that church on the rock as well as the satellite view of that church so you can kind of see the spiral path.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, look at that spiral path.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Like, where? It's a lot of ground to cover.
A lot of ground to cover. You know, it could be up at the church. It could be down on the ground. It could be just a different town. But basically, this is one of the major leading theories for the final destination is collating a bunch of clues and especially leaning on clue 7s to find the spiral with 4 centers. A lot of people say, well, there is a spiral at the center of this place, at this particular town, which meets a lot of other clues, so maybe it's here. Interestingly, Valentine himself was born, quote, a few dozen kilometers north of this village, according to Atlas Obscura. So maybe this place holds a special spot in his heart, and maybe this is why, you know, another motivation for it to be here, right? Outside of the clues.
Ah. Yeah, you start getting personal. You start figuring out, like, what matters is this person.
The only major wrinkle, clue-wise, is despite its interest and its fascination with the spiral and everything in the city being close to where he grew up, other owlers point out that Dabo lacks the, quote, 4 centers, which we'll kind of talk about in a little bit, but I think that's a crucial element because it seems like there's not a lot of wasted words in the riddles. But again, who knows? Is 4 centers one of the red herrings, or is it something we should listen to? That's what makes this so difficult.
I know. And it's also like what team has it right. You know, going back to, you know, team A has this part right. Team B has this part right. It's like, how do you know what team A and team B are?
Right. What if team A's right, but then they go, oh, we are assuming B is right, so we dropped our answer, and now suddenly the correct answer is assumed wrong. You know, like, it's tough. But regardless, many treasure hunters have gone to this city, and they've dug many holes around it to the point where the mayor begged them to stop. I don't know if the mayor would know about it, but he's like, please stop digging holes all around this city.
I mean, that's the other hard part, too. You can't just go digging wherever you want to, you know?
Right.
So even if you were to be so determined to go there and dig up this whole place, it's a problem.
It's a problem. Now, I don't know how many spirals there are across France. I'm sure there are many, especially when you have a very steep plateau with a fantastic building on top. The easiest way to get up there is a spiral rather than a direct shot. But suffice to say, throughout the book, there are many spirals featured. And so I can imagine why people think that this is the location because it is very prominent. It matches a lot of the clues. But regardless of this specific location, people have pulled apart the idea of the 4 centers. In fact, according to Tooting Joe, that's the user who runs goldenowlhunt.com, according to them, some hunters believe that this 4 centers can still play into the spiral idea by way of a geometrical shape called the involute of a square, or a spiral that extends outwards from a square. To help you visualize what this looks like, imagine a square block with a string tightly wound around it, and at the end of that string, you tie a pencil. You hold the block down and you slowly unwind the pencil on the string, and as it unwinds, it makes a spiral. And it's a very specific shape because it's based on the center item being square.
Oh, interesting.
Still makes a spiral, but it's just a slightly different variant of the spiral, making it kind of simple. So Tooting Joe indicates that treasure hunters are likely intended to use a bow compass over a map, given the time period the book was created. And this also plays into some other clues where you're going to need that fine-tooth comb sort of map to find the spot. And a bow compass is just what we used in geometry class. You know, it's like the point on one side with a pencil on the other. And so all of this combined in my head just makes me think that there's going to be some like arcs and spirals being drawn on this final map. And wherever these arcs or these spirals intercept will probably be the dig spot. Again, it's all very kind of cerebral. There's nothing really to ground it. So I apologize if this is a little trippy to follow.
No, it's a very cerebral case, but I like it. You know what I mean? And it gives you like a chance to kind of like challenge ourselves. So we have some that are like, it was a murder, or they're, you know, much more simpler, straightforward. This one's like, hey, get your thinking caps on.
Yeah.
It's about to be distilled into a little cup for you.
Oh, yeah. It definitely needs to be. This needs to be a real consolidated, distilled iteration of knowledge because, you know, I can't gulp on this one. This is definitely a sipper.
I'm low-key mad. They said 2 hours.
2 hours, like
2 hours
maybe to
turns
drive
like
there.
30 years. Like, what?
Yeah. Now, I'd be remiss before I kind of close some of these theories and some of these angles without mentioning the theme of light. It's unclear the meaning of light in this context, but Valentine refused to answer any questions around light. But basically, a lot of the clues center around the theme of light, whether it's astronomy, the speed of light, historical figures like the Sun King or the Lumiere brothers, or locations like Luxury. There's just a lot of themes that I would be remiss if I didn't mention. But again, I want to be careful because I just want to enjoy the topic of this mystery. This could very easily spiral into a very confusing conversation of unsolved, open-ended riddles.
Yeah.
Some other things that I want to leave the task force with is that there are some bits of information that Max Valentine revealed about the location that could really help dial in. Maybe once you know more, of course, but it basically provides bumpers. He said things like it's not on an island. It's at least 100 kilometers inland, which France has a lot of water, so that's good to know. It's public land, so that means it's probably not going to be built upon, at least not for some time.
Yeah.
It's not at a high altitude. None of the paintings show the dig site itself. You're going to have to use that 12th clue, I think, to figure that out. So it's not also at a graveyard because he doesn't want anybody digging people up.
Right.
Among other details that have still yet to lead anywhere. But these are some at least very helpful guidelines to either help maintain respect in the searching community, but also help people kind of go, oh, what if it's on that really small island out there? Like, I'll just treacherously swim over there and no.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the concerns of just having a bunch of people just throwing themselves around unknown locations and in the wilderness. And, you know, people aren't, you know, not everyone knows how to maneuver around the forest or trails and stuff like that.
Now, the last thing before closing is that many owlers have discussed the locations. At least 5 of the riddles lead to cities. And again, that kind of comes back to my gut question, which is, what's the significance of putting these cities in order, right? What do you get when a solution is just a city? If not to go there and be like, all right, well, this isn't the final destination, so why did I come here? A lot of people are still wildly theorizing about these locations. So of course you have Bourges, that's the first clue and the one we went over, but then you also have a few solutions like Roncevaux, Carignan, Golfe-Juan, and Cherbourg, which are all other French towns or cities.
Oh, Lord.
And people have done all sorts of things to try to incorporate them into the solution in some way, whether it be drawing on a map or something more academic, like I was saying, like something about their histories or something about how they came to be. But again, that's beyond me. I don't know nearly enough about French history to even begin to theorize on that. But beyond this, many, many small theories still exist and attempt to answer both the small and large pieces of this puzzle alike. We may never know if the golden owl is real or if this treasure hunt will ever be solved, but regardless, it's certainly captured the hearts of many and continues to intrigue treasure hunters to this day.
That's cool. It makes treasure hunting a real thing.
It does. I think there's something really cool about that. And also, I don't know, just like being able to actively theorize alongside a community when the thing is not solved. And it's also just like, let's just be honest, it's not a true crime case. So it's super not morbid. So it can be like, I don't know, there's times where if you're doing a lot of theorizing and researching, but it's a grim case, you kind of get a little exhausted and you want to go away from it. This is a treasure hunt, which to me is like highly motivating. Like I would want to stay on top of it nonstop, and like it could become a hobby and be really exciting and really good at community building. Even if it is a hoax, you would hope that there would at least be a solution.
Yeah, a good story, a good journey.
Yeah. So that has been The Trail of the Golden Owl, a wildly interesting treasure hunt with so much more nuance, so many more riddles to discover. So Task Force, let us know if you get hands-on with that one. You can chat about it in our Discord channel that's been made available to Patreon members exclusively. There's threads for each of the mystery topics we cover, so you'll be able to kind of get tangible, get hands-on with this mystery and theorize. Talk to other, maybe some Task Force members in France can like help with locations and some of the history and see if they can help draw clues together. But otherwise, patreon.com/redweb is another way to get not only access to Discord, but you get this podcast ad-free. You get our bonus show, Movie Club podcast, and a bunch of other bonus looks behind the scenes, deleted things, stuff that doesn't get made available to the broader public. Just to thank you for supporting us directly.
Exclusively for you.
Just little tidbits, little nuggets, you know?
I know you like nuggets. You can even make them dinosaur shaped if that's your thing.
Dinosaur-shaped nuggets?
That's all I'm
Made
saying.
simply out of distilled knowledge as you sip on the sippy cup? That's a knowledge meal right there. Thank you guys so much for listening. Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.